In this video, I'm going to discuss mortgages. So our objectives in this video, we want to learn about how to calculate the down payments for mortgages, learn how to calculate loan payment amounts, learn how to calculate the total amount paid on a loan, determine the principal and interest, how much is going to each of those elements, and then we're going to learn about mortgage points. So we're going to start off, I want to start off by showing you the loan payment formula. This is going to be an important formula throughout this lesson. This is something that in my class I would not expect you to memorize. I'll give it to you, but you are expected to know how to use it. So we want to kind of go through this real quick and understand what all the pieces mean. So PMT is standing for payment. That makes sense. We've talked about P before. I'm going to just write these right next to it here so we have them sitting there. P is always talking about the principal. And we've looked at this from the investor side. For instance, if we're going to put some money into a bank account, if we're going to take out some sort of investment, we're going to put money into an account. That P is talking about the money today. And so when we're talking about a loan, this P, this is the loan amount. This is kind of from the bank's perspective, how much money they're giving you, the principal today, what that amount of money is today. APR, you may also see this written just as R. It's representing the rate. N is the number of payments per year. And so I think I was even a little careless in my problem. I didn't specify this, but almost universally, short of getting some really weird mortgage, this is always going to be 12 for mortgages. You're always going to make monthly payments on a mortgage. And so, I think I'm pretty bad when I write out problems. I don't even say assume that you're making monthly payments. It's just kind of assumed. Anytime you have a mortgage, this is going to be a monthly payment unless you have some really weird loan. And then finally, the Y, or you may also see this written as the T, that is representative of the year. And so depending on your book or depending on the source that you're looking at formulas from, again, T or Y, and then instead of APR, you may also see just an R. So that's the formula we're going to use quite a bit. Of course, we're going to also just have to know how to work with percentages and understand how principal, interest, everything's playing in. So we're going to just jump right into an example to do this. I think that's the best way to illustrate it is just to get right into an example. So one of the first things we're going to calculate, we're going to have to look at how much we put down. So let's go through the scenario. You want to buy a house that costs $190,000. You plan to get a 30-year mortgage with an interest rate of 6.5%. And we want to know how much we have to put down on this house. Now, why do you have to put something down? I thought the whole point of getting a mortgage is so that you didn't have to put money down right now. Well, that's true to a point, but the bank's not just going to give you $190,000 and say, okay, go out and get any house you want, without making you have a little skin in the game. If you didn't put any money down, you could go out to the bank, get the $190,000, buy your house, and then just choose to walk away after 6 months because there's nothing really tying you to that house. So what the bank says is, hey, you give me some money now, I'll give you the rest of the money, and together our two amounts of money, you can buy that house, but you have to put a little bit in so that way they know you're serious, you're not just going to walk away. Also, you might say, well, could the bank just turn around and sell it? Well, they could. They don't really want to be in the house sales market. The other thing too is they don't know that you're not going to mess it up. So if you put some money in, you're going to be more likely to take care of that house because you don't want to lose your investment. So how does this down payment work? We're simply going to take the percentage, in this case 20%, we have to convert that to a decimal, so 0.20. We're going to multiply it by the total amount that we have to pay for the house. So 0.2 or 0.20 times 190,000, and that gives us $38,000. It's not an insubstantial amount. Now we still have to have quite a bit of money to be able to put down a down payment on a house. $38,000. You're going to have to walk in to the closing of the house. You're going to have to give the other person $38,000. Theoretically, check or your bank might transfer the money via wire. But you're going to have to transfer that $38,000 to the bank. It's going to come up with the rest. So that's our answer to this. If we think about what that leaves, though, that still means there is a chunk of money unaccounted for, $152,000 in fact. So my next question here is going to be find the monthly payment of your loan. But the first thing we need to do is find the mortgage amount. So the house cost $190,000. You are putting down $38,000 of your own money, and that means the bank's coming up with the rest. The bank is coming up with $152,000. So for this house, you're putting in $38,000, the bank's putting in $152,000. Again, that $38,000, not insubstantial. You might be saying, well, how am I ever going to get to that amount of money? Well, maybe it requires buying a slightly cheaper house. If you had a cheaper house, this number is going to be smaller. This number would also be smaller. And then, after you have that house for a few years, that house will gain value. Then you'll have more, if you were to sell it, you'll have more money for your next house. And so that's why a lot of times you'll hear the term starter house. That starter house is kind of the first one to get into the market. Not necessarily your dream house, just the one to start building value, so that way this number gets bigger when you go to buy your next house. There are 20% is a pretty standard down payment. There are some other alternatives. So veterans get a lot of times a lesser amount, could be as low as 5%. First-time home buyers sometimes will get a special amount. So there's some ways that number might go down. 20% is the standard. If you pay less than that, usually the bank's going to make you pay for extra insurance. So you end up paying a little bit more in other areas down the road. Let's keep going with this problem number, letter B though. We want to find the monthly payment on the loan. So we know that the loan is actually going to be for $152,000. That is going to be equivalent to our P. So now we're going to come up here to our payment formula. We're going to calculate our payment. So 152,000 is our P. The APR, remember the bank's going to give us an interest rate of 6.5% right now. Not a great rate, not a terrible rate. There's been higher in history, but that would be relatively high for the last 10, 15 years. But it's pretty average actually for today, which is in the year 2023. So the APR, 0.065. The N, this is where I said could be careless sometimes, but I did actually say monthly payments, so that means we're making 12 payments per year. And then in the bottom, we're going to have the 1 minus 1 plus APR 0.065 over the N, 12. And then we raise this to the power of negative N times Y. And the N is still 12. The Y, remember we're getting a 30-year mortgage, and so that is all in the exponent. Now be really, really careful when you go to type this in the calculator. One thing you need to keep in mind is these brackets around the denominator are important. You can just use parentheses in your calculator, but these brackets right here and here are very, very important. The other thing, the formula doesn't put it there, but really it's not a bad idea to always put exponents in parentheses. So throw some parentheses around the negative 12 and 30. If you have one of the newer calculators, when you hit that exponent button, it tends to make the exponent, and it's not as big of a deal if you don't include those green parentheses. But for the older calculators, what I have here in front of me, I have to put parentheses around that, otherwise it doesn't know that that entire thing's the exponent. So I'm going to type this whole thing in the calculator. And when I do that, I get $960, and I'm going to round to the nearest cent. So that's going to be 774 cents. So that will be my monthly payment, $960.74. So to buy this house under this plan, day one, I walk into closing, I put down $38,000 on the table. And then every month after that, for the next 30 years, I'm going to have to pay the bank $960.74. Next, I want to know what will be the total amount you repay to the bank. Well, that $960 per month is covering remember, $152,000 that the bank put into the loan. That's the principal, what the bank paid. It's covering that, but the bank's not just going to give me this money for free. It's not going to just say, okay, repay the $152,000 and you're done. The bank wants to make some money for lending this money to you. Otherwise, they would have never done it. The bank would have never given you any money if they could have just kept their money and not gained anything. So it's going to be more money than just $152,000. So how would we find this amount? Well, we are paying $960.74 every single month. So that means 12 months per year. and we're paying for 30 years. So I'm going to take that monthly payment, I'm going to multiply it by 12 for the number of months in a year, and multiply it by 30 for the number of years we are making payments. And when I do this calculation in my calculator, I get 345,866.40 if you want to have the full cents on there. So $345,866.40. So quite a bit more than what the bank actually lent me. We were lent $152,000, we paid $345,000. So the next question I have then is what percentage of the amount went towards principal and what went towards interest? Well, we know what the principal amount was. The principal was $152,000. It's a good idea to find the amount that goes towards interest. Well, we know how much total we paid, $345,866.40. The principal is $152,000. So by subtracting those two amounts, I get $193,000, $193,866.40. So that is the total amount of money I will pay in interest. I actually pay more in interest than I do in principal. And that's not uncommon on a 30-year loan, especially with interest rates around this number. That would be pretty typical. And so we wanted to know the percent towards each. Well, we now know the amount of principal. We know the amount of interest. So to get those percentages, what I'm going to do, I'm going to take the principal, $152,000. I'm going to divide it by the total, $345,866.40. When I do that division, I get 43.95%. So almost 44% of my payment is going towards principal. That leaves the rest for interest. This principal. And then interest is going to be equal to 193,866.40 over 345,866.40, and I get 56.05. Shift over a little bit, 05%. And that shouldn't be very surprising because if I look, these two numbers together have to add to 100%. Your money is either going toward the principal, it's going to interest. It's the only two places it could possibly go. So when you add those two things together, you get exactly 100%. But once again, we see we're paying more in interest than in principal. So maybe we think, hey, that's a little bit unfair. I mean, they're lending us money for 30 years, so that's a long time. They're going to have to get, a significant return on investment for that. But maybe we'd really like to pay a little bit less over the entire course of the loan. So one thing that banks a lot of times will do is give you better interest rates. If that interest rate gets better, obviously, then we're going to be making smaller payments, and then we're going to be paying less money over the long term. So they'll give us a better interest rate if you pay what are called mortgage points or closing points. You may hear it either way, mortgage points or closing points. And so what that is it's a percentage of the loan amount. And it's just money you give the bank today, and for giving the money today, then they'll give you a better interest rate. It's kind of a way to buy a cheaper interest rate. And any number of reasons that banks would want to do this. One, they get more money today. They're giving you, they're getting money today, which is nice for them. And then it also shows, again, that commitment that you're not just going to walk away from the house, because that's something the bank's also considering is, you only have 30, whatever we said it was, $38,000 in the bank. They have 152. They have a lot more room for potential loss. And so if you destroy the house and end up walking away, they're out of a lot of money, you're out of a little bit of money. So they want to see that you're serious. So we are going to take our two mortgage points, or 2%, that's what that is, 2%. We're going to multiply it by the loan amount. And so remember, the principal was $152,000. And when we multiply these two things together, we get $3,040. So not a ton more, considering you're already in for $38,000, just another $3,000, and it gets us a little bit better interest rate. We're going to see how much that really helps us in just a second. What that does mean is our closing costs have gone up. we had the 38,000 that we calculated in that very first part, 38,000, plus the points, 3,040, and that gives us $41,040. And so that is the total amount that we will have to pay at closing. And actually, here's the truth. It's going to be more. When you actually go to sign the paperwork in the realtor's office or in the bank, wherever you end up doing, probably a lawyer's office, honestly, there's going to be additional closing costs that we haven't considered here. So for instance, you're going to have to pay a lawyer to write up the paperwork, to kind of do all the official stuff, and that can be a couple thousand. Usually you're going to pay for a home inspection because you want to make sure that what you're buying is what you think it is and that it doesn't have rotten floors. So it's a really good idea to do a home inspection. That could be $500 more. The bank might have some additional fees for this, that, or the other. So usually those closing costs, in addition to these points, closing costs could be another, $5,000, $7,000, $10,000 depending on what all you're paying. So chances are this number is going to be on the low side, quite honestly. But let's see what those points have done for our total amount of money we have to repay. So we now are getting a better interest rate, which means our payment is going to look a little different. Remember, just a second ago we calculated it. It was the 152,000 times the 0.065 divided by 12. Everything's going to be more or less the same, except for that 0.065 is going to change to 0.058. So we'll have the 152 times 0.058 over still 12, still monthly payments, divided by 1 minus 1 plus 0.058 divided by 12 to the negative 12 times 30. And just like before, be very careful in the calculator. It might help to throw those parentheses around there and make sure you include, I need a second bracket back here. I need to make sure I'm closing the denominator. So be very careful with those parentheses. And when we do this, we should get, let's see, $891.86. And so comparing that to what we just saw a few minutes ago, before is $960. So every month we're paying about $70 less. And that's kind of nice, right? We did have to come up with a little bit more money short term, $3,000 more. But every single month our monthly payments are a little bit cheaper. So yeah, we paid more up front, but each month we're putting a little bit more in the bank. We want to know not just what the monthly payment was, but how much we have to repay. So let me create a little bit more space here. I want to know total paid. So just like before, I'm going to take my monthly payment, $891.86. I'm going to multiply it by the 12 because of 12 monthly payments. Multiply it by 30. And when I do this, I get $321,000, $71.26. $321,071.26. Compare that to a few minutes ago. Before we're paying $345,000, 345, let's say. So we're paying about $24,000 less, a little over in fact, which is significant. We paid $3,000 up front, and we've saved ourselves $24,000. So that's pretty good. Now the trade-off again is just the fact we had to have more money up front, and maybe we just don't have any more money. Maybe the $38,000 was all we had. So that's a trade-off when you go to buy a house. Last, one other thing you're going to see banks do a lot of times is for shorter mortgages. 30 is pretty standard. It's the longest for most part you can get. But they do have shorter mortgage periods, and for shorter mortgages, the bank's going to give you a better interest rate. And the reason for that is because you're just giving them money back faster. So that's nice for them, and they're going to give you a better rate. And so here, this bank has decided that for a 15-year mortgage, they'll give a 5.5% interest rate. So consider that, considering the initial was 6.5, that's a whole percent better. Might not always be that good, depends on the bank. But we want to now see, based on that interest rate, assuming no points, how much are we going to pay over the course of the loan? So we're going to calculate our monthly payment first. We're still getting $152,000 in a loan. Our interest rate now is 0.055. That number has changed. It's still over 12. We're still making monthly payments. In the denominator, we're going to have 1 minus 1 plus 0.055 over 12. And now another thing is going to change. Our X payment, we have negative 12 times only 15, because we are only paying for 15 years. Be careful with your parentheses. And I should have pointed this out before, but I'll say it now. Some people will ask me, well, won't the 1 minus 1 just cancel? Doesn't that just go away? Do I need to write that? Yes, you do, because this is being raised to a power, and we know we have to do powers before we do subtraction. So we do need to do the 1 minus 1 plus in parentheses, that stuff first. When I do this calculation, we get a total of $1,241.97. Okay, well, what just happened? Because we saw before where when we had that lower interest rate, our monthly payment went down. It went down about $70, and now our payment's just gone up by about $300. That's a significant jump. Why has it gone up even though we have a lower interest rate? Well, because we're making only 15-year payments. We're making payments for 15 years. So we've got to repay that whole principal of the house in just 15 years and not 30. Now, a lot of people think that when you go from a 30-year mortgage to a 15-year mortgage, what that means is your monthly payment's basically going to double, because you have to pay the same amount, and it's going to take twice as, you're going to do it twice as quick, so it's going to be twice the amount of money. What we see is that's not true. Our payments went from just about $900 to $1,200. So it went up by about a little over a third, right? Not half. And the reason for that, one, we're saving money in the interest payment here, the interest rate is lower, and two, we are just paying less in interest because we're paying fewer periods. We're paying over less time. So it's not just that, oh, if I want to go from a 30-year to a 15-year mortgage, it's going to double my monthly payments. It's going to go up. It's going to go up by a decent amount, but it's not going to be double. It's not going to be just whatever your old number was times 2. So let's now calculate how much we will pay. Total paid. And so I have a payment of $1,241.97. I'm paying that every month. So times 12 times 15 this time. And when we do this calculation, we get $223,554.03. That's significantly under where we were before. Remember, when we went from a 30-year mortgage with no points to a 30-year mortgage with points, we saved about $24,000. Going from the points to the 15-year mortgage, we've saved about another $100,000. We've saved a lot of money by switching to a 15-year mortgage. The downside here is we have higher monthly payments, and that's something that you have to look at your budget, and that just might not be something that's realistic. It might not be something that you can afford. But I do always like to show this calculation that if you're considering buying a house right now, if you can afford a 15-year mortgage, that is going to save you a lot more in the long term. The other really nice thing is in 15 years' time, you get to stop paying them altogether. And that's just $1,200 or however much you're paying in your pocket basically every single month. So that's a really nice option if you can afford it. Now, if your salary is just not in a position where you can afford that, it is way better to take a mortgage that you can afford and not have to worry about risking a default where you can't pay and the bank repossesses the house or takes back the house, forecloses on the house. That happened to a lot of people back in 2008. People lost their jobs, people's lives changed, their circumstances changed, they couldn't afford their payments anymore, and so the bank took their house. And so, sure, we saved $100,000 by switching to a 15-year mortgage, but if we're not going to be able to afford those payments and the bank's going to take it away from us, then we've lost way more money than just $100,000. So it's always best to choose what fits in your budget. It might be more cost advantageous, however, to consider, well, maybe I want to go for a little bit cheaper of a house now because then I can afford a 15-year mortgage or I can afford a few more points. So these are all decisions that you'll have to make when you're considering purchasing your own home. But it is a good idea to do some of these calculations to figure out what really makes the most sense for me